The Black Business Council is hosting the Black Business Annual Summit this week. Now, several cabinet ministers are expected to address the event, including ministers of agriculture, health, trade and industry, as well as public works. I'm told now we have the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, on the podium. Let's take you there and listen in.
Further cautions that significant risks remains. Further fragmentation of the global economy is a key concern. Higher and broader increases in trade barriers will hit growth around the world and add to inflation. With this background in mind, our presidency of the G20 takes place amid a volatile global geopolitical climate, which has contributed to fostering a climate of distrust, thus threatening to unravel progress we have worked hard to address, pressing global challenges like deepening inequality, unemployment, and poverty, amongst others. Addressing these overlapping challenges requires enhanced international cooperation, in particular, mobilizing support and resources to tackle the internal disparities driven by the uneven distributional effects of trade and globalization that is critical. These platforms of the OECD, the African Union, and the United Nations therefore becomes important, including this platform of yours, because it will definitely create a voice that is important for the transformation in the African continent and the globe. The African Development Bank flagship 2025 African Economic Outlook Report projects economic growth to increase to 3.9% in 2025 and 4% in 2026, despite mounting geopolitical uncertainties and trade tensions. It is for these reasons that I say there are good things that are happening in Africa, despite perceptions that we're just a continent of conflicts. Despite global headwinds and significant challenges, the report reflects positive projections and continued resilience, notable that 21 African countries will achieve growth exceeding 5% in 2025, with 4 of these countries potentially reaching the critical 7% threshold required for poverty reduction and inclusive growth. Africa's projected growth rates will surpass the global average. Maybe I must repeat this. Africa's projected growth rates will surpass the global average and outpace most other regions except the emerging and developing Asia. Africa's continued resilience is built on effective domestic reforms and improved microeconomic management. It is against this background that our diversification strategy as the South African government is anchored on the continent. We want to see the involvement of many South African businesses in the continent. And when we say South African businesses, we mean both black and white businesses, small and big. I have always raised this issue when we have trade missions across the continent, that when we say business, we don't only mean big business in the continent or anywhere in the world that must be given opportunities. We also mean small businesses. We also mean businesses run by black South Africans. Importantly, the report highlights the significant domestic resource potential, which properly harnessed could earn additional at least 1.43 trillion in domestic resources, including from natural capital, human capital. Africa has the most youthful population in the world. 60% of our population is youthful. It must be harnessed and be properly channeled towards helping with economic growth and the new economies that are emerging in the world. Financial capital and business capital have got a role to play. With our strong financial industry in the country, we also have a very good position to enable investment and playing a key role in the African continent by South African business. But not only in the African continent, but across the globe. We have got businesses playing a role in the USA, in the European Union, in Asia, and many parts of the world. Black businesses must also be part of these initiatives. And we as government have a role to play to ensure and facilitate that you play this role. In this regard, urgent action is also needed to address massive capital outflows from illicit financial flows, profit shifting by multinational corporates, and corruption. Other downward risks to outlook include restricted trade, persistent inflation, reduced conflicts in the continent, persistent and perennial debt burden. Again, according to the AFDB, principal repayments alone on external debt in Africa could exceed 61 billion in 2025, representing around 69% of total debt services. A 2024 AFDB report estimates that African countries are currently paying 500% more in interest when borrowing on international capital markets compared with the rates that could be achieved by borrowing from multilateral corporations and finance institutions such as the World Bank or the African Development Bank. With a disproportionate share of commercial debt, much of it is held in US dollar with the attendant high debt service cost. Africa's debt burden remains a major policy concern. Promoting inclusive trade and investment can help bridge domestic and global divides, supporting the resilience of developing countries in particular. It is vital that the G20 under South Africa's leadership prioritize inclusive and sustainable development, structural economic diversification, green industrialization, and the creation of robust, inclusive supply chains as key themes for its agenda. We do need yourself as black businesses to also play a role to reinforce government messaging here at home, continentally, and abroad. In the context of our country, inclusive growth has a broader meaning. And this I'm not only saying here because I'm at a BBC meeting. We say it at FOCAC, we say it in the United States, we say it in all platforms, including with the European Union, that inclusive growth in South Africa, it must mean the inclusion of...
Now, those are proceedings coming out of the Black Business Council today, and that is, of course, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation there, Ronald Lamola.